പ്രതിനിധി സമ്മേളനത്തിന്റെ ഉദ്ഘാടനം നടക്കുകയാണ്. സീതാറാം യെച്ചൂരി സംസാരിക്കുന്നു.
I am joining this inaugural session of this 23rd Congress of the Communist Party of India, Marxist. We are gratified at the presence of eminent public figures, distinguished veteran leaders of the communist movement and leaders of various contingents of the people's struggles. I wish to thank Comrade D. Raja for his physical presence here to greet our Congress. Comrades Devvrata Bishwas, General Secretary, All India Forward Bloc. Comrade Manoj Bhattacharya, General Secretary, Revolutionary Socialist Party. Comrade Dipankar Bhattacharya, General Secretary of the CPIM Liberation, for some compelling reasons have not been able to physically participate. They have, however, sent their greetings and fraternal messages to the Party Congress, which are being circulated, and they will be read out in the inaugural session. In the present context, the working together of the left parties to strengthen left unity is of vital importance to meet the current challenges being faced by our working people, by the secular democratic Republic of India, and the constitutional order. The greetings of the left parties reflect the mutual desire to resolve and strengthen the left unity, which is vital for our country today. Comrades and friends, we are meeting at this region of Kannur, which has historically been a crucible for civilizational churning and the confluence of many cultures. This is also the birthplace of the communist movement in Kerala and one of the outposts of the communist movement in India. Religiously oriented people usually go on tirth yatras to visit various shrines to get blessings. A communist or a revolutionary goes on a tirth yatra to the places which have been the ground, the earth on which the revolutionary movement advanced, and to pay homage like we are here in Kannur, because no tirth yatra for a revolutionary would be complete without visiting Kannur, paying homage to the Kayyur martyrs, paying homage to the Karivellur martyrs, and draw inspiration from the strength of the revolutionary movement and traditions here. Pillai, from whose name our Chief Minister, our Politburo member, our leader draws his name, village, hosted the first Communist Party conference in Kerala. The legends of the communist movement, Comrade P. Krishnapilla, Comrade A.M.S. Nambudripad, Comrade A.K. Gopalan, and many others were delegates to this conference. With Comrade P. Krishnapilla as the secretary, the Communist Party started functioning initially from a place called Chirkul in Kannur, braving intense repression, often having to work from underground, particularly when the party was banned. These dedicated comrades carried forward the revolutionary struggles, laying the foundation for the communist movement in Kerala and for the communist movement, in that sense, contributing to the communist movement in India. The anticipatory vision of the communists, their dedicated struggles, earned the confidence to make the Kerala communist movement a formidable outpost for the Indian revolutionary movement. The organizing committee for this Congress has compiled this rich history, revolutionary history of Kannur, in a small booklet called Kannur, the Red Land. That is being circulated to all of you, and I only appeal to all of you to just read it so that we can draw the necessary inspiration for galvanizing the party in today's conditions. And in the challenges that we face in today's conditions, it's most appropriate that this 23rd Party Congress is being held here in Kannur, and we are determined to draw the inspiration from this land in order to strengthen the Communist Party and the communist movement in the country, which is of vital importance. Dear comrades and friends, for more than 4 years since the last Party Congress, or during these 4 years, it was exactly in April 2018 that we last met, For more than 2 of these 4 years, the world has been plagued, including India, by the COVID pandemic. This has wreaked havoc, disrupting the lives of millions of people. Even before this pandemic struck, the global economy as well as the Indian economy was actually on a very severe downslide, moving towards an economic recession. The pandemic worsened this situation, and during the pandemic, the economic recession that set in was marked by the lust of capitalism for profit maximization, and it completely exposed the gross inadequacy of capitalism as a system in meeting the requirements of the people, particularly in providing universal health care. In contrast, we saw the experience of the socialist countries, how they dealt with the COVID pandemic and re-energized their economies to bounce back onto a growth path. This contrast between capitalism and socialism as systems has once again established the superiority of socialism. And the conditions in India at the same time have also demonstrated that where a government led by the CPIM and LDF government in Kerala, the manner in which it had handled the pandemic had earned both domestic and international acclaim as the Kerala model, and where you have parties dedicated to the cause of the people or people-centric, then the handling of the pandemic was seen with a marked difference from what the capitalist countries did. This pincer attack of COVID and the economic recession has led to alarming levels of growth in hunger, poverty, educational deprivation, intensified exploitation of the working people, along with growing unemployment. But at the same time, given the very logic and character of neoliberalism, you find the profits of the world's millionaires rising during the course of the pandemic, that in the year 2020 alone, the total wealth of the world billionaires grew by $10.2 trillion, while the people were suffering from the various issues that I pointed out. And in India, the top 10 people, 10 individuals, during the course of the pandemic, have grown their wealth to hold 57% of our country's wealth, as opposed to the share of the bottom 50% of our people, who actually have a share of only 13% of the wealth. This is predatory capitalism at its worst that we are seeing. Now, in this quest to control the government so that these predatory policies can be followed, the market political rightward shift is taking place in every country. This rightward shift in politics is to ensure governments that will promote neoliberal policies and at the same time disrupt the growing unity of the working people in struggles against this double whammy attack of the pandemic and the economic recession. And this disruption, the political right seeks through appealing to emotional passions, fostering divisive appeals, promoting racism, xenophobia, religious sectarianism, fundamentalism, parochialism, and in the Indian context, communalism. This rightward shift is to sustain this neoliberal order, at the same time to ensure that the unity of the working people in struggles does not reach levels where it can threaten the rule of capital itself. And that has to be prevented. This political rightward shift is the answer of the ruling classes. But this is being resisted. You have countervailing forces that have actually resisted and advanced. And the most classic case, inspiring case, is that in Latin America, where you have, in many countries, the left democratic and progressive forces, a combination of them, electorally defeating the political right and forming the governments there. As a digression from the written text, I can mention Chile. 50 years ago, when my generation was growing up, was the centerpiece of the launching of neoliberalism with the ouster of the Allende government and the Pinochet dictatorship that would come in by US imperialism. now in that Chile 50 years later, you have a democratically elected, left-oriented government with 3 members of the Communist Party of Chile holding very, very important positions. Yes, where people have united and fought, this can be resisted, and that has been demonstrated through the Latin American experience, and also in some parts of the Europe, where in your Scandinavian countries, you have defeated the political, they have defeated the political right. But in this process, the quest for global hegemony by US imperialism continues to aggravate. In the post-COVID situation, this quest for global hegemony is sought to be directed to ensure that no country or no force can actually challenge US imperialism. And in that, the main target of US imperialism today is China. The global rise of the socialist China has actually posed this threat whereby US imperialism has shifted gear from this earlier strategy of containment of China to what it today pursuing, the isolation of China. And in the process of isolation of China, it's mobilizing all its allies, all its Western allies. And in this process, it is creating conditions in the world which will have serious ramifications for the social contradictions that exist in the world today at the international level. Now, when this has been going on, came the Ukraine war. Today is the 42nd day of this war in Ukraine. We have said the war must immediately stop. There must be a ceasefire, and through negotiation that must be done. But we must realize that this is a war actually between Russia and US and NATO. And Ukraine is the theater where this war is being waged. And this has been caused by the relentless expansion of NATO, which should not have existed after the Soviet Union's disintegration. Expansion of NATO to the Russia's borders, where they have 175,000 combat troops stationed on Russia's borders. All Eastern European countries have become NATO members except Ukraine and Georgia. This effort to make Ukraine a member of the NATO and pose the threat is the provocation for this war. And whatever this provocation, but the war must end. This must be ensured that there is no eastward expansion of NATO any longer. And this must be ensured, but at the current moment, the war continues to rage on. But the actual culprit behind this is the quest for global hegemony by US imperialism, which is the reason for NATO's expansion. Now, in this context, while this war has set in, many more developments that will have international ramifications, along with the US imperialism's thrust for strengthening its hegemony. In this context, the role of India has come into focus, with India consistently abstaining on all anti-Russia resolutions in the United Nations. During the last 7 years, particularly, there's been a trend happening earlier, but during these last 7 years, under this BJP rule, India was taken to a position where its status as a subordinate junior ally of US imperialism was cemented. We've joined imperialist alliances, imperialist military arrangements, and with lots of treaties, India became a junior partner of US imperialism. But with the war in Ukraine, the futility of taking up this sort of a direction in India's foreign policy of becoming an appendage to US imperialism, that futility has been thoroughly exposed. It is clear from these developments that India has to pursue an independent foreign policy, maintaining the supremacy of its own national interests first, and not becoming an appendage to any imperialist bloc. And therefore, the time has come for this Modi government to reconsider withdrawing from the Quad, which is a military alliance with USA, Australia and Japan, and with military exercises being conducted. India should start distancing itself from the Quad and should actually think in terms of exiting the Quad, because in these conditions of today, after the Ukraine war, in these new conditions, this entire futility of this approach has been proven. While these developments are going on in the international sphere, dear comrades and friends, these 4 years, particularly since the return of the BJP to form the government in 2019, India has been subjected to the aggressive pursuit of the Hindutva agenda of the fascistic RSS. The BJP government is adopted a multi-pronged attack in pursuit of this agenda, and the aggressive neoliberal reforms that it is pursuing, which is strengthening the communal corporate nexus that we spoke of in our 22nd Party Congress, which is brazenly promoting crony capitalism with the wholesale loot of our national assets, is legalizing political corruption and simultaneously imposing a full-fledged authoritarianism and authoritarian state apparatus with the complete attack on the democratic rights and civil liberties of individuals that are guaranteed by the Constitution. What we therefore see is the undermining of the Indian Constitution and change the character of the Indian Republic. All the 4 fundamental pillars, foundational pillars of the Indian Constitution, that is secular democracy, federalism, social justice, and economic sovereignty. Every single of these fundamental pillars is under assault today. The implementation of the fascistic RSS agenda of their Hindutva Rashtra requires a unitary state structure, which is completely contradictory to the federal state structure that is given in our Indian Constitution. So, to achieve this objective, they are simultaneously undermining, that is the government, BJP government, undermining the independence and authority of every single institution created by the Indian Constitution. Beginning from the Parliament itself, laws are made without any discussion whatsoever. The judiciary, the election commission, the CBI, the ED, every one of these independent institutions, their independence will be compromised, and there is a determined attempt also in this process to aggressively carry forward this agenda while not paying any concern whatsoever to the problems that people are facing.
Red salute, രക്തസാക്ഷി ഗ്രാമങ്ങളെ